How do you feel about this? Scientists in the US have grown human cells inside monkey embryos. Some see it as a scientific breakthrough, others as an ethical minefield. The process involves human stem cells being inserted into the monkey embryos. Then scientists examine how this hybrid, or chimera, develops. The aim is to try and learn more about things like organ transplants, disease and ageing. This time-lapse shows the process taking place. The stem cells multiply and are monitored for 19 days before being destroyed. Well, to explain more, I'm joined by Sarah Norcross, Director of the Progress Educational Trust, which works to advance public understanding of science and ethics in areas including genetics and embryology. Good evening, Sarah Norcross.
Good evening, Andy.
Hi. Thanks for joining us. Do you accept that there are real medical advantages potentially from this sort of work?
Yes, I think there is potential there because there's so little that we really understand about basic human and primate biology. So the more we can understand those early developmental stages, that in and of itself is a really important aim. And then, as you said in your introduction, how that can then be potentially used to create animals in which it may be possible to harvest human organs from for organ transplant in the future, such as in animals such as pigs.
But of course,
that's something that's been talked about in the past, but it's nowhere near there yet.
OK, but of course people are going to see this and talk about embryos, monkey embryos, human stem cells. They are going to be concerned. I mean, and there are things to be worried about in this work, aren't there?
I think it's really important that people think about these issues and that we have this conversation like we're having this evening, because there are lots of ethical issues. And I think when people start to think about it, they should first perhaps think about, why are the scientists doing this? What are they trying to achieve here? Is this something that is a potential human good? And if so, then how can we put checks and balances in place so that scientists can do this in a responsible way so that we as a society are comfortable with it. And I'd like to give some praise here to the scientists who've done this research, because a large part of their scientific paper includes discussion of the processes that we went through with various ethical bodies, including independent ethical bodies outside their institutions, so that they could make sure that everything was as good as it could be from that perspective, which is so important. And as well, with it being published in a good peer-reviewed journal, this is out there so that the public are made aware of it through news agencies like yourselves. And it is, it's not scientists doing things in secret behind closed doors.
Well, do you think that the rules in this country are strong enough at the moment to keep this sort of work under control?
In the UK, we have a really great regulatory framework in relation to human embryos and human admixed embryos, which is governed by the Human Fertilisation and Embryology Act, which was updated in 2008. And then for animals containing human material, which is what these embryos would come out, we have different legislation. So in the UK, things are very well regulated.
What about elsewhere? Because the worry is surely that whatever we can do here, or maybe in other countries that we would regard as having similar sort of sensibilities to us, somebody somewhere is going to do this sort of work with very little control. That's got to be a worry, hasn't it?
This is always a concern, that there will be a rogue scientist in a country that will do something. But the best that we can do to prevent that is for the scientific community to adopt a collegiate spirit, and because they work in groups, they don't tend to work in isolation, that they monitor each other, because there are international guidelines around these things. They don't have force, but there are recommendations and guidelines for scientists to follow. And often scientists won't get funding if they have to get public funding or from a commercial organisation, if they're not following those guidelines, because the reputational risk to a company or to a government.
Well, I'm sure a subject we're going to be talking a lot more about in the future. Sarah Norcross, thank you very much indeed.